In chapter 542, we learned the truth about the origins of Ichigo's powers, a shocking revelation that in hindsight changes the way we viewed both Ichigo and his quote-unquote inner demons. There's a lot to break down here, so let's take it all the way back to fully understand what meaning and significance did their inner actions have. In order to understand the dynamic between Ichigo and his inner powers, we need to understand some key components that Kubo heavily emphasized while writing his story. Firstly, the three main themes regarding Ichigo's story arc, which are self-blame, self-acceptance, and self-actualization, which is his journey to protect others in order to fulfill his purpose, hence strive to become stronger if needed. The second component is the power system, specifically the Quincy blood, Zanpakuto spirits, and Holos. And the last component is the contrast between both White and Old Man Zangetsu in terms of characteristics, symbolism, and rule. When Ichigo was first introduced, he was portrayed as a gloomy, hot-headed teenager. He was inexperienced, harsh, and also full of himself, yet kind-hearted and is desperate to save those who are in need for help. Now he might seem as your average shonen protagonist, but the more you progress into the story and start to understand his character, the more you're gonna come to the realization that he's not just that, as Ichigo was never the gloomy, hot-headed guy when his mom was around. Ichigo lost his smile the moment his mom, the one he wanted to protect, died protecting him. He then struggled with blaming himself for not only causing her death, but also for ruining his family's life by taking away their source of happiness. He felt guilty and depressed to the point he considered himself to be the killer of his own mother, and always wondered why isn't his family blaming him for her death. In short, he felt terribly about himself because he struggled to accept the way he was. Remember that Ichigo's name means the one who protects, and from his point of view, he quite literally done the complete opposite of that, which drove Ichigo into a state of constant sadness, where this sadness goes away only when he reflects on what he has done by protecting others, which fulfills his purpose. So when Rukia granted Ichigo Soul Reaper powers and made him capable of protecting more people, he couldn't feel anything but be thankful. One of my favorite scenes in Bleach is in the end of the Soul Society arc. After Ichigo saved Rukia, he thanks her for stopping the rain, which signifies that Ichigo's sadness that was symbolized by the rain stopped only when he saved one of his loved ones. Now at this point of the story, Ichigo only treated his powers as a tool that he didn't even recognize as part of himself and used it to achieve his goals and make him feel better about himself, which takes us to the second key component, the power system. A lot of people don't really understand who is Old Man Zangetsu and whether he is the same guy as Yuha, so let me get this out of the way. Quincy's are not spirits, they are humans with special powers and can interact with other spiritual beings. The source of their power comes from the blue blood that runs in their veins, and any power that any Quincy possesses belongs to their father, Yuha, and can be taken away from them at any given time. Hence, every Quincy, whether it is Ichigo or even a Stenrator, has a fragment of Yuha's power that runs in their blood, in which means that all Quincy's have a manifestation of their Quincy powers that resembles Yuha similar to that of Ichigo. What makes the confusion here is that Ichigo was the only one to interact with that manifestation, and I think the reason is because he is a hybrid Soul Reaper and Quincy. Because unlike Quincy's, only Soul Reapers, because they are souls, have access to their inner worlds, where they can interact with other spiritual beings residing inside of them, be it as a Zanpakuto spirit or even a Quincy manifestation. I want you to think of Old Man Zangetsu or any other Quincy power manifestation as a Zanpakuto spirit but for Quincy's. Essentially, he is an external power, a part of Yuha's soul, and that is why he looks like him. But at the same time, he is the manifestation of the power a Quincy possesses, and his personality is unique to each one of them, just like a Zanpakuto spirit. Even though Zanpakuto spirits were all the same initially, the more wielders master them, they start pouring their soul into the Asuichi until it becomes a reflection of the user's soul. Therefore, both Old Man Zangetsu, Ichigo's Quincy power manifestation, and White, Ichigo's actual Zanpakuto, reflect a part of his personality. But which side of Ichigo does each one of them reflect? As for Old Man Zangetsu, I always viewed him as the calm, gloomy, and caring side of Ichigo. He got troubled whenever Ichigo got troubled. He also verbatim stated that he hates the rain, which signifies Ichigo's sadness, as in he hates to see Ichigo sad or troubled. He was the one always there for Ichigo to comfort him whenever he struggled mentally in battle, and notice that Ichigo's desire to protect others is reflected on Old Man Zangetsu wanting to protect Ichigo himself. On the other hand, White was generally perceived as your typical strong evil-ass demon trapped inside the main character that takes over to save their host when they are on the brink of death. However, the relation between Ichigo and White was way more complicated than that for various reasons. Firstly, as it was revealed, White was not just a holo, he was Ichigo's true Zanpakuto spirit that provided him with power all along the way. And as I just mentioned, a Zanpakuto spirit is the reflection of the user's soul, so not only White was the source of Ichigo's power, but he was quite literally Ichigo himself. And Ichigo not only didn't recognize or believe him, he didn't even know his real name. Combine this with the fact that the power in Bleach comes from the name, and that the Zanpakuto granted their user the full extent of their powers only when both of them recognize one another. A couple examples are when Renji's Zanpakuto didn't tell him its real name because it didn't fully recognize him, and Yumichiga's Zanpakuto not letting him use the full extent of his abilities since he doesn't call it by its true name. And with all of that in mind, it only makes perfect sense that Ichigo was unable to use no more than a fragment of his Soul Reaper powers, which was consistent all the way throughout the series. Secondly, the duality of White's nature being both a Zanpakuto spirit and a holo combined with the way Ichigo dealt with him. As we all know, holos are the embodiment of one's negative emotions, and since White is a both reflection of Ichigo's soul and the embodiment of negative emotions, White symbolized Ichigo's negative emotions. The thirst for power and the desire to slaughter enemies in battle without any sympathy are two things that White states form the very essence of everybody's existence. And notice that Zaraki too holds the same beliefs about power and fighting, and maybe that is what he meant when he said that he and Ichigo have something in common. Say what you want about Zaraki, but this guy's instincts never mess. And at the time Ichigo fought him, and even after their fight in the Arrancar saga, Ichigo was still forcing himself to suppress both White and those feelings instead of understanding them. And Ichigo's hesitation in those battles could have easily gotten him killed multiple times if not for White intervening and saving his ass, which is something that White tried telling Ichigo in his speech about the instinct, as White uses the analogy of the king and the horse, telling Ichigo that if he didn't stop hesitating and show him the killer instinct in battle, he is gonna be the one taking over and leading both of them into battle, which happened in the Ichigo vs Ulquiorra fight. But with that out of the way, I want you now to notice the most artistic aspect in my opinion about the two Zangetsu's dynamic, which is the clear contrast and differences between both of them in nearly everything. Their looks, one is pitch black and the other is fully white. Their personalities, one of them is more caring and empathetic in the way he talked to Ichigo and taught him stuff, the other is still caring but tough and has more of a dad personality. Old man Zangetsu tried keeping away Ichigo from fighting, on the other hand White urged him to fight. Old man Zangetsu was lying to Ichigo even though he looked more credible, meanwhile White was telling the truth all along even if he didn't look like it. And lastly, and I might be reaching a little bit, but after Ichigo accepted both of them as his Zanpakuto and achieved a dual-wielded Zanpakuto, one of the Zanpakutos is short and the other one is long. I don't think all of these choices were simply a coincidence, but rather a subtle way to show, not tell. And with one of the main themes regarding Ichigo's story arc being self-acceptance, of course it is gonna be hard for him to understand, let alone accept these completely opposite sides of himself, especially with each part of them having its own roots and characteristics that he doesn't know about. But by the time he does know the truth, he will already have come a long way in his self-acceptance journey to accept both of them and understand their actions. Hence, on their behalf, they will grant him whatever power he needs and aid him in his battles to fulfill his purpose in life and get rid of what burdened him mentally. A perfect conclusion to one of my favorite plot lines in all anime. However, I don't think this is gonna be the end for both Zangetsus. Considering the major changes that Kubo himself is making, one of the stuff that is definitely gonna get heavily expanded upon is the final fight against Yuha, and I'm almost certain that we're gonna get added content for both Zangetsus in that fight, because first off, this is the final fight of the series, and of course Ichigo's inner power is gonna play a major role, especially with the recurring theme of Ichigo wanting to cut fate and Yuha being the embodiment of fate. Honestly, it's gonna be dope if it turned out to be an actual plot point and not just a fan theory. I also think that Ichigo will probably talk to them before unleashing either his true Bankai or the Horn of Salvation transformation. I genuinely can't wait to see stuff like this added, but unfortunately, all we can do is wait. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing.